What if I said to you that the Reformed account for Scripture is even worse than you might think, and is even more problematic and more nonsensical than what a lot of people realize it is? Let's get into it. So, the normal course of action is to camp on how the Reformed do not have a theanthropic institution of the church which is guarded from error and which can authoritatively produce decrees like the canon of Scripture being a decree. Instead, the best among the classically Reformed will fall into some form of saying that the church authenticated the Scripture and that she was guided by the Spirit in her authentication. All right. You know what? I agree. The church was guided by the Spirit in authenticating and producing the Scripture, but that's a different thing. The problem is that what Reformed theology typically falls into at this point is talking about the self-authenticating nature of the Scripture and how the Spirit of God testifies in the hearts of believers to the special category of Scripture in their lives. That's all well and good if you can say that you have access to the Spirit of God. Here's the problem. Reformed theology also makes allowance for people to have spurious faith. If you look at Westminster, I think it's chapter 18, you will see that they use the language of hypocrites and vain men who deceive themselves into believing that they are among the elect. The only measure truly for election, and it is not an infallible or inerrant measure, is a faithful life lived right up until the end. Because the list of the elect is known only to God. It is His choice in this paradigm. It is part of His secret will. And you don't have access to that. You can't even say that you are numbered among them, because you may be one of the hypocrites and vain men or vain women. This is 2025. Let's do better. Vain persons. There we go. Vain persons. You may be one of those vain people who believe themselves to be among the elect, but are self-deceived. If you only believe yourself to be among the elect, and you cannot say with any authority that you are definitely among the elect, then you cannot say with any authority that you have access to the Spirit of God via His indwelling. If you cannot make the claim that you have access to the Spirit of God via His indwelling, whichever pronunciation you prefer, you cannot make the case that you have access to this self-authenticating nature that the Scripture supposedly has, because the Spirit of God is not necessarily testifying in you. Furthermore, you cannot say that the church was able to do it, because you cannot say that the members of the church at that time of that council, the people that were there, had access to the Spirit of God. Kind of falls flat. So, the self-authenticating nature of Scripture is a claim with no teeth and that falls flat on its face.